Grant, Miller, Trenton, Dunn here, May 18th, Saturday morning. Early out here on the West Coast following a dramatic night of round 2 hockey. The Eastern Conference is set, Grant. We got the Panthers moving on, playing against the New York Rangers. Avs eliminated last night in heartbreak fashion, double overtime after forcing Game 6. The Stars now advance to the Western Conference Final and await their opponent in the Vancouver Oilers series. Vancouver Canucks currently lead that 3-2 and look to finish that up in Game 6 today. Grant, as far as the work life goes, brother, it's been a hard working week. Been a lot of pucks deep, a lot of battles around the net that I've had to figure out and navigate in my 9 to 5. How's your week been, brother?
It's been packed. The slate of hockey games we had last night really did kind of get me through a pretty rough Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I would say they lived up to expectations. I was rooting for both, obviously the Avs with our friendship, and then I was rooting for the Bruins just to get another Game 7 out of this. But it's still a lot of good hockey, and we got a fun one again tonight. We're starting to see kind of the cream rise to the top a little bit with these matchups, and that's what you want as the playoffs go on. So it's been fun, might not be the right word for it, but it's been playoff hockey.
You hate to say it, but you make a great point. The Eastern Conference Final, Rangers, Panthers, I think the vast majority of fans and analysts across the country could have predicted that one. They were the two best teams in the East. So
yeah, and we love a Cinderella. We love a team that comes out of nowhere and asserts themselves, and then, the rest of the league's kind of on notice. But I think when you looked at these two teams on paper headed into it, you just say, man, those are the teams to beat. And now we get to see them, beat the crap out of each other for a couple weeks.
It's going to be an epic matchup. I had initially titled this episode Comeback City, Grant, because we had 3 forced Game 6s and really thought we were going to get at least 1, if not 2 Game 7s. Was not to be. Grant, I'm now titling this episode, I Need a Hero, because I didn't get one last night in my Colorado Avalanche, and that's okay. It happens. Maybe next year I'll get my hero. But before we dive into that, we want to hear from you, hardhead hockey fans across the country. Huge boost this week. Social media posts, got to give a shout out to my brother Mitchell Zerniak, Richie Dunn, Matt Connolly, who we interviewed back in episode 3. If you haven't checked that out, please do. Boston's Beauty, Northeastern Hockey alumni, and Dina Dunn from the Tampa Bay area. We appreciate all the love and support. Certainly gave us some growth this week that we are looking for in growing our podcast and growing our fan base. You can reach out to us. We'll be giving shout outs all playoffs long on Facebook, on Twitter. Email us at hardheadhockey1@gmail.com. And I'll leave this here now at the beginning. We usually do this at the end. But if you had a beer at an NHL game, what beer are you drinking? We want to know. Email us in. Let us know, and we'll give you a shout-out. We'll talk about it next week. We'll talk about you and your favorite beer on next week's episode. How does that sound? People love the people.
That's a great question.
It is a great question.
I love a cold beer at a hockey game.
Grant,
sometimes at the Jackets games, that's the best part.
I've got a new affinity for Canadian lager, Moosehead Lager. I've never had it before until playing in this men's league, and they sell it at the rink. Oh my God.
That's a really nice niche area to like a beer. It's just your local rinks, kind of like concession stand.
Yes.
That's special. That's a special type of beer right there.
I love talking about some of the best beers. So a lot of people go with the shower beer, like the pre going out beer.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of like good beers in life, right? One of them is your local rink beer. Yeah. Post game. Yeah.
Post men's league, do you crush them in the locker room, or do you take it out to like the parking lot and kind of tailgate?
No, yeah, I mean all the above. Locker room.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Pre-game, post-game. It's fuel, man.
If I can pull the curtain back a little bit, and Trent will like this. So in college, Trent was like actually on the team, and then later in the years, I started to do the public address. I did the PA for the hockey team, but prior to doing that, I was just like a rowdy fan for our college hockey team. And, small school, Northeast Ohio. I was on the football team, both Trent and I were. So we weren't able to like tailgate in the fall in like a traditional sense for like the games. And, Worcester for certain home games did have a pretty nice atmosphere, but when you're playing, you don't have that. You're on the field, which is great, but you don't have the fan interaction. So come hockey season, we would tailgate the hockey games in like, 2 feet of snow in the freezing cold and just convince ourselves like, this is a great time. We're having a great time. And it was, it turns into like we got to keep doing this because we did it one night and then, Worcester pulled off the upset against like Ohio Wesleyan or something silly. So then you keep it going. But, the administrators kind of shut that down after a while. They'll be in the parking lot like this. But yeah, that was a good kind of like low kind of energy rolling in there after a couple parking lot beers.
Grant, all I'm hearing are your blue collar vibes, and it sounds like hard hat hockey's been in your blood for a long time. So this is just destiny, and we're playing that out as we speak. Grant, got a huge show today. History of the slap shot is what we're going to talk about very briefly first. And honestly, I needed something to take my mind off of game analysis. So we'll just go with a quick softball and a little history lesson for our hard hat hockey fans. What's next for the Canes? What's next for the Bruins? What's next for the Avs? Round 2 wrapping up. We'll talk about we'll talk about the Canucks versus the Oilers and that dramatic matchup in Canada, and a little NHL housekeeping at the end, and then we'll tie it up with the hard hats of the week. Before we get into this history lesson, I would like to make a note that there is a severe struggle to defend the home turf. There is no Helm's Deep mentality. The boys are not stepping up on home ice for these playoff fans that are desperate for a home win. Road teams are 17-7 in round 2.
That's outrageous.
What in the world? The Avs dropped all 3 games at home. The Boston Bruins dropped all 3 games at home. What are we doing?
That's crazy to see that out loud. Cause I don't know, you don't want to say you assume, but like home ice has to mean something. Apparently it doesn't. You would think, you would hope.
You would think. I thought so. I was more confident about game 6 for the Avs than I was game 5. I'm thinking home ice, but also more than home ice. We already lost the first 2 at home. No way we lose a third. We were the best home team in the regular season. No shot.
That's the thing. It doesn't carry over for some reason.
I know.
Yeah.
It's weird. Well,
talk to me about the slap shot, Trent.
Anyways, history of the slap shot. Grant, the history of this slap shot is sponsored by the Labrador Retriever Club. The Labrador Retriever Club maintains a special fund for the emergency care of Labradors who are abandoned across the country. Reach out today at thelabradorclub.com. What better way to enjoy the Stanley Cup in all its glory than with your new best friend? Go Labradors. We got a new sponsor, Grant, the Labrador Club.
Love to hear that.
People love Labradors. Okay. The slap shot was first used in a game in 1937 by Alex Shabicki of the New York Rangers. It became popular when Rocket Richard, as we know him, used it to perfection in becoming the first player to score 50 goals in a season, where he would go on to become a 14-time All-Star and 8-time Stanley Cup champion with the Montreal Canadiens. Later on in life, a study by The Athletic determined that in the 2009 and 2010 season, there were 7.11 slap shots per game. That since dropped to 3.73 slap shots per game in the 2021-2022 season. Of all the rookies in the league this year, there was 1 goal via slap shot from Luke Hughes of the New Jersey Devils. My conclusion, there is less time for a slap shot on the ice. New generation of defensemen doesn't seem to prioritize it in their puck-moving capabilities. And it is an art that I would appreciate to remain in the game. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think I have a lot of respect for it too, because I know how difficult it is to crack off a hard clap bomb from the blue line. And I frankly, I didn't have a good one myself. My slap shot never really evolved to where I wanted it to be. So I've got a lot of respect for it. And I'd like to see it, stay in the league.
Did you read that Athletic article that you mentioned?
Yeah.
It was very good. It was good. And it has a lot of, this is going to sound like I'm a child, but there's a lot of cool photos in it to diagram what they're saying. It's basically saying like guys on the ice don't have as much space Because if you think of like a slap shot, you gotta be able to, spread out a little bit, and there's less space on the ice because everyone's fast and everyone's really good. So you don't really have the ability to wind up and let it rip. And if you do, they're kind of inefficient. You miss the net a lot of times and it just goes careening off the walls and then back the other way. And it is a shame. I think about like watching hockey. I mean, I love that you said, 08, 09. I mean, I think I watched every single Jackets game that year and then some because my family just got NHL Network that year. So I was just watching a ton of hockey and I can just like the images of just the studs back then, like Lindstrom or Phaneuf, and he wasn't that great, but guys, just the defenders, just the big bodies, just putting everything in their shots. Yeah, you don't see that nearly as much. What did they do before the slap shot? Were they just kind of like sliding the puck into the net?
Yeah, I'd imagine.
It seems so like instinctual.
Yeah, probably wrist shot, I would say.
Yeah,
probably.
but like, I don't know. If I was on I'd be like, I was like, I don't know. I imagine all these guys golfed. It's like, it's kind of similar.
I mean, maybe.
Not exactly. I don't know. I just, the fact that it took so long for one guy to be like, I'm going to wind up a little bit.
It was the 30s, so.
Well, they played hockey.
Did people golf?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Golf's been around forever. President Taft was golfing.
Yeah, I know, but like NHL and golf goes hand in hand today, but did it go hand in hand in 1937? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. That's how batting gloves started. Did you know that like the first like baseball player to like wear a batting glove was just like a golf glove?
Oh.
Because like you wear one at golf because of all your torque. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to just wear this to the game today. And everyone's like, you loser. Why you got that glove on? I mean, you should try it. And everyone tried it and then batting gloves started.
Interesting. I've actually enjoyed keeping up with the PGA Championship at Louisville, Kentucky this weekend. My hometown.
We could do an entire podcast on what happened yesterday, buddy.
I'd rather not. A quick sidebar. I was very impressed at Scotty Scheffler's ability to come back and play very well on the same day he was around.
I'm amazed.
That's impressive.
the tweet of just like Scotty will make his team, which is very funny because like when golf reporters just like aren't prepared to like handle this, so they're like, we got to get like the news directly to them. And like what the news is like, how did this happen? What the hell? But from like a golf journalist perspective, it's like has to be on the tee at 10:08 and he will make it. It's like, oh, thank God.
And fans already had T-shirts that they were wearing out on with his mugshot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. All right, Grant. What's next?
Let's get into it.
What's next for the Carolina Hurricanes? Of all the teams eliminated in round 2, this is probably going to be the most volatile offseason. So they have $32.45 million in projected cap space. Restricted free agents to bring back: Seth Jarvis, Marty Necas, and Jack Drury. Unrestricted free agents to bring back: Jake Gensel, Teravainen, Martin Nook, Brett Pesce, Brady Shea, and Chatfield on the blue line. Contract years coming up. So the last year of their contract will be the 2024-2025 season. Jesper Fast at 2.4, Kuznetsov at 3.9 million, Jacob Slavin at 5.3 million, Brent Burns at 5.28, Dmitry Orlov at 7.75 out. Ooh. Freddie Anderson at 3.4. So let's talk about the players at first, and then we'll get behind the bench. So to me, no question, you're bringing back Seth Jarvis, you're bringing back Jack Drury. There's been a lot of fan questions about Marty Necas and if he's worth it, because he's going to demand a lot on this next contract. I'm thinking at least 6, probably 7 million, just because he is such a dynamic skater and playmaker. When you look at this, it's very deceiving. $32.45 million in cap space. That's a lot, but that dries up so quick with some of these names. That Jake Gensel contract will have to be huge to keep him. If you bring back Teravainen, that's going to be pretty big. Brett Pesce, if you want to keep your defensive depth, will be big. Brady Shea will be very expensive, and he will demand a lot on the free agent market if they don't bring him back. I see a lot of turnover here.
Yeah, I think it's unavoidable. I mean, I think you could bring a lot of the key assets back and still look like a completely different team. That's just the way this is constructed. And, the guys running these teams contrary to public belief, they're not dumb. So they know when the cliff is coming sometimes with these years. And that's not necessarily to say like by design, but I don't think, the Canes front office went into work today, opened up a spreadsheet and said, "Oh my God, look what we have to work." Like they're prepared for this. They have a plan in place. I think you're just going to see a lot of changes, even if they do bring the people back. Cause like you said, it's 32 million's a ton, but I mean, that's probably, I don't know, 8 deals, maybe 7 or 8. And then you list it off, I think double that. So you're going to have to get some new blood in there. And I don't think that'd be the worst thing for the Canes. I think, I've kind of evolved my take on this as I've gotten older. It's very fun to keep the band together year in a couple years to just change the character of the season a little bit. Not necessarily change the character of the team, but just the vibe of the season's got to be a little different. You can't just try to do the same thing you did last year and expect the same results. You need guys to challenge in different positions. But the way the Canes operate though, it is kind of formulaic. So it's very interesting to see. And then, they got a decision to make behind the bench too.
Yeah, they blew the series, frankly. I mean, they forced that game 6 at 5v5. Expected goals for, Corsi for, possession numbers, high danger scoring chances. They had the better stats the whole series. They just couldn't execute. They couldn't finish. They couldn't stay out of the box. They took some dumb penalties.
That's big. That's big.
Yeah, they're missing, I think, a little star power. I think Jake Gensel would look really nice next to maybe a new shiny center that they can find in unrestricted free agency.
I don't know if they can keep him.
I think they're going to prioritize keeping him. I don't think that's a guy you just let. I think that's an answer moving forward. And Canes fans are probably more apt to keeping him around longer term than sticking around with like a Marty Natchez or, re-signing Brady Shea.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But I do think that where they'll find flexibility is the trade market on July 1. One of my favorite days of the year is when unrestricted free agency opens up. They will look to move probably Brent Burns, $5.28 million. That gives you a little bit of relief. Dmitry Orlov, definitely. They might have to eat some of $7.75 million there. And I think they're obviously going to look to move Freddie Anderson at $3.4 million and go a different direction in the pipes. Moving any one of those contracts gives you flexibility to not only re-sign some of your desirable unrestricted free agents, but also get a little creative in the free agency market, give you a little more space.
That's the other part of this equation. It's not just bringing, like, you're not going to be able to bring everyone back. So then you got open roster spots. Then, like, what do you do with those roster spots? You got to get new guys in there. You got to be able to afford new guys. That's just the realities of the cap league. But it is, I will be eyes on Raleigh all summer, truthfully, just to see what they're doing.
It'll be tumultuous. The most tumultuous decision will be behind the bench. Rob Brindamore, is he coming back?
I don't know. If you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said like absolutely 100%, but I'm starting to get like less and less confident.
I think they are fools if they don't re-sign him.
I agree. I'm with you, but I can see them overthinking this.
This is a guy, if you let him walk, will go to another franchise and he will get a Stanley Cup. He's a fantastic coach, a fantastic human. The guy, not that it matters, is jacked. He is ripped. He keeps himself in great shape.
Is that what makes him a great coach?
I mean, you think about head coaches getting in a fist fight, Rob Brindamore's winning. No question.
Oh yeah, but that's not part of their job.
Well, if I'm cheering for a fan base, I got a lot of respect for Jared Bednar, longtime enforcer in the minor leagues. I'd like to see that as a fan. Rob's got a mean hook. But yeah, I hope they keep him. And for nostalgia's sake too, he did so much for that franchise as a player.
He is kind of the identity there. And there's a lot of organizations that don't have an identity. We might have one in Columbus right now. So if you have an identity, if you have a play style, if you have a character about your team, if that logo has something beneath it, you're in the right direction. But if you're just tired of getting like bounced in the conference finals in the second round, you might overthink it.
I think this decision too, this would be the last point, then we got to move on. But the decision too has to be a little surgical. I'm a big supporter of small market teams. Carolina very much being one of those. But with small market teams, and I've got a lot of respect for the Caniacs as they become known, you've got to be careful in how this is going to affect your fan base. It's not like they've got some nationwide following, right? It's
a big deal locally, and I think that's special. I think that's almost like,
I love it. I think it's great. So, but what does that do to the fandomship that's, locally generated, moving a guy like Rob Brindamore as head coach? I wouldn't do it. I'd sit him down, say, this is our plan for the off season. We want to go target these players and try something new on the ice next season, but I don't think he's your problem.
Yeah, I agree. I could see them overthinking this.
I do too.
Yeah.
Grant, Florida Panthers finished off the Boston Bruins in TD Garden last night. Pretty dramatic fashion. It was about 90 seconds left. Kind of a fumbled. Jake DeBrusk did a nice job getting back defensively. Wotherspoon, in his attempt to block the shot, went straight through his legs and then just squeaked by Swayman. Cannot say enough about this kid. Before we get into what's next for the Bruins, and Hard Hat Hockey fans, just as a reminder, we'll be talking about round 3 and the teams that won in our following episode, as is tradition. When the team loses, we like to talk about what's next for their off season.
In memoriam.
In memoriam, right? Give them their respects. They made it this far. Let's give their fan base a nice send off into the sunset before we go off season mode. Grant, this series was no void of dramatics. In game 3, Sam Bennett hits Brad Marchand coming across the ice in the neutral zone. Camera angle from one end on national television didn't tell the full story, as we got the camera angle from the opposite side. About a day later, it looked like Sam Bennett's glove, fist, if you will, made contact with Brad Marchand, kicking him out of game 4 and game 5 with a head injury. And before his return in game 6, Brad Marchand went on to say in a presser in the locker room, people don't want to say it, but part of playoffs is trying to hurt every player on the other team. The more guys you take out, the more advantage your team has.
He's talking from experience there.
You could take that a lot of different ways. I thought at the time, like, oh, that's a threat. There's going to be some fireworks. And they definitely targeted Bennett last night. You could see, like, Charlie McAvoy went out of his way to line Sam Bennett up at one point. But no question.
He's like that. He's their muscle at this point. Like, McAvoy's kind of be the guy, like the nails kind of guy to do that. Yeah, it was weird. It was a weird series because I cut you off here, but for the past 8 years, 10 maybe, I don't know. Like, the Bruins are kind of hateable, and they get looped in with that kind of just general kind of Boston energy, and that's not fair to the Bruins organization. But I can't. I'm a simple guy. I don't like the Patriots. I don't like the Celtics. The Red Sox, whatever. That's American League. I don't really follow it. But yeah, the Bruins are right there with the Jackets. Had a tough series with the Bruins a few years ago. Very hateable. This team they overachieved. And there is something likable about that. There's a lot of kind of younger, different guys on this team that are new characters to watch, but out there is very hateable. Matt team, I'd love him, but he's not, so he kind of falls into that category. So I don't know. It feels kind of like a bridge year with them. They maybe overachieved a little bit. We'll see what they do. They're a very well ran organization. They're not like a disaster. They're not messy in any way. But Marchand's saying that, it's like, dude, what? He knows what his reputation is. He's very self-aware. He knows what he's doing when he's talked like that.
To your point about the city of Boston, love them or hate them, that fan base is loyal to a fault.
They show out throughout the whole year too. It's not just like, oh, playoff time comes around.
Well,
there are a lot of people like that, but the TD Garden's a tough place to go to.
Fans showed up at the Florida Panthers Hotel in downtown Boston and were pulling the fire alarms while they were trying to sleep. I mean,
that's some like South American soccer stuff. That's what they do down in like Argentina.
That's electric. I mean, that is buy-in if I've ever seen it.
Don't do that. If you're listening, we don't condone that. But if it is going to happen, we're going to talk about it.
Look, I'd be pissed if I was a Florida Panthers player. I would. No question. I would be furious. But, you know, as far as sports go and sports drama goes, that's pretty hilarious.
Well, now we're going to get like a whole ecosystem of like teams with like private security, find like the entire hotel. Yeah, that's going to go a lot of different direction.
We've stayed in downtown Denver and always gotten the government rate for the Ritz-Carlton, which is just wonder that they even offer the government rate at the Ritz-Carlton. It's great hotel. But every time, that's where the opposing teams always stay. And I always ask, because I know the answer, like we were there for the Stanley Cup in Game 5. Hey, are the Lightning staying there? But they can't tell exactly. And the people up front always do a really nice job in protecting that answer. Like, I'm not sure. They'll play stupid. And then, of course, here walks Steven Stamkos, and they're walking onto a bus. I'm like, you lied to me. You knew. I knew you knew. So the Florida Panthers won 3 straight games 2, 3, and 4. Boston wins Game 5 in Florida to force Game 6, leading to the Panthers' ultimate sealing of the series in Game 6. Let's see here. The Panthers' power play the first 3 games of the series was 5 for 15. And then the last 2 games, so games 5 and 6, they were 1 for 13. So the Bruins' penalty kill definitely improved throughout the series. The Bruins' power play was 1 for 16 the entire series. So a little bit of disparity here between special teams execution. I'd say the Bruins definitely improved throughout the series. There's a couple of games there early on. Wasn't super hopeful, but it was good to see they locked down team defense. We talked about it in our last episode. If they have any chance here, they've got to improve their team defense. Pavel Zacha had a beautiful goal last night. That was great to see him step. They're not in a terrible spot here, Grant, in the offseason. Just like you said, they definitely outkicked their coverage a little bit. And you think they're a year removed from the departures of Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci, and an organization's ability to just rebound that quickly is impressive, and it's hard to do. And we'll get into the numbers right now. They got $21 million of cap space this offseason. Their RFAs are Boquist and Jeremy Swayman. Give that boy the bag. Unrestricted free agents, Jake DeBrusk, JVR, Pat Maroon, Danton Heinen, Forbert, Shattenkirk, and Lucic. Don't think you're going to bring him back. So I'm looking at a lot of unrestricted free agents here that you let walk. I think DeBrusk has done enough to earn another contract with them. I hope they bring him back. He seems to be a Boston boy. Maybe you bring back Heinen, but the others, you let walk and you're at peace with it. I think you re-sign both your RFAs here in Boquist and Swayman. I don't think you do a bridge deal. I think you lock him up. I think he's one of those guys, just like a Bergeron. That's Boston's boy, man. You lock that up. That's going to be a fan favorite for years to come.
I get a little apprehensive about goalies. They're so fickle.
They're temperamental. They're temperamental.
Playoff, you have playoff success. It is very romantic, and you can kind of get swept up into it. I could see, they're a good organization. Whatever they do, I'm sure it's going to be rooted in it. He was amazing. I mean, I'm rooting for this guy. I'm not trying to talk down on him, but teams have been burned by dropping the bag on a goalie a little too soon.
I don't disagree. I think even after whatever deal Swayman gets, and assuming they bring back DeBrusk to a well-earned contract, you're still looking at a decent amount of cap space where they could go add to, I would assume, some defensive depth is where they're going to look. Maybe like a younger, forward that's up and coming that won't break the bank, but can support Marchand or even Pasta on that top line. So we'll see. Jimmy Montgomery got nothing but great things to say about him. His acting behind the bench this series was hilarious. I don't know if you saw on Game 5.
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
Intimidating.
You can't coach that. Yeah.
talking about the Panthers diving. It was great.
Oh, yeah.
He's getting into it. I love Monty.
He's very likable. He's kind of all those guys. Like, there's some coaches I like kind of really don't like to see on my TV. Like, I feel the opposite about him.
I would agree. As far as the draft goes, they are a little depleted. So they've got a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th round pick, which is, that's the cost of doing business if you want to stick around the playoffs for years. So I don't think they're going to upgrade in that department, as I don't think they're going to have a lot to offer to go get a 3rd, a 2nd, or even a 1st round pick. But frankly, I don't think they care. They're, they're an organization that looks for playoff success. And if you're going to do that, you got to sacrifice assets. So
yeah, they know what they're doing over there.
Okay, Grant, we'll jump over to Denver. Last night, game 6, heartbreak for my boys. Sorry, just let me take a breath.
Double OT, man.
Okay, so before I get into my heartfelt opinions, let's just go through some numbers here. So the Avs expected goals for at 5v5 was 3 goals in game 3, 2 goals in game 4, 2.5 goals in game 5. Last night was the second time that the Stars at 5v5 had more expected goals for. The Stars at 5v5 had a negative Corsi for the majority of the series, believe it or not, which is why we talk about, advanced stats are great to help paint a picture, but they don't paint the entire picture. And this is my point. In double OT last night, the Stars' expected goals for was 3.7 to the Avs 2.9. The cardiac kids for the Avalanche were not enough. Simply put, if you watch the game, they ran out of gas, man. We're out of depth. It's the Stanley Cup tax, but we'll get into the Nichushkin deal in NHL housekeeping at a later segment in this episode. And that obviously played a factor. But they're out of depth. And you're looking at a team that was purged of Logan O'Connor with a season-ending surgery back in February. Obviously missing the heart and soul of the team and Gabriel Landeskog now going on 2 years, which is a huge blow. Valery Nichushkin, he wasn't in the lineup for obvious reason. And then even like a depth piece like Yakov Trenton, I doubt he would have even seen the ice in overtime, but that's still, it's a blow to your depth. So if he takes a couple shifts in the first 3 periods and just gives a little bit of extra gas to Nate McKinnon, it all makes a difference. The Avs are out of depth. So
yeah, we were talking about it before we started recording. When you're not seeing a lot of rotation on the ice over the course of a series or a game, it's demoralizing because you start seeing diminished returns on the guys that are on there. Like you got to keep the legs fresh. You need new play. You need depth for, the other team just to like have to prepare for playing against 3 lines and 6 defensemen. And, the best teams have different looks. If it's just your top 6 and your top 4, you're going to run into a wall a little bit. And unfortunately for the Avs, that wall was the Dallas Stars. The Landeskog thing is it's almost so obvious that it's like, if he's not on the ice, it's just a different team. And, I'm not going to win any pundit awards for that statement, but like he's a guy I just loved watching play for so many years. And
you loved watching him play?
No, well, I'm trying to appeal to you here.
I'm kidding because I resonate with that statement to my core.
Yeah, I know you do. And I think the part of that's kind of been like, they were out there grinding for these playoffs and, like you said, a little bit of a cup tax. And I think it'd be very easy to say like, oh, they just won the cup. Like, how can you be that disappointed? Well, over the course of the playoffs, you start to buy in, man. Like you want to believe in all of it. So like, it still hurts. It's not, the time moves on and you still have expectations as a fan. So.
Yeah, for those wondering, yes, I did have a Gabriel Landeskog jersey. I still have a Gabriel Landeskog jersey, but back in college at the College of Worcester, they would often make its way to, whatever party that Grant and I would traverse to. So, Landeskog's name has been around a lot of parties in Northeast Ohio. So good to know. Grant, this offseason, the Avs are looking at $15.91 million in cap space. The only restricted free agent is Casey Middlestat. Obviously going to bring him back. That is your second line center, and he looked great last night. Unrestricted free agents, you've got Trenton, Brandon Duhaime, Andrew Cogliano, Jonathan Drouin, Zach Parise. Rip, that one hurts. Kivi Ronto, Sean Walker, and Jack Johnson. Just looking at this, you probably let Trenton go. Duhaime, I'd like to see brought back. That'd be a really cheap deal. Cogliano's done. So I hate to say it, but he's out of gas. Zach Parise already announced that was his last game. Joel Kiviranta, cheap deal. I'd like to see him come back on a fourth line role. Sean Walker probably can't afford. Jack Johnson, same. I think it's time to cut ties. And the Avs, believe it or not, have been able to produce some nice prospects even in their Stanley Cup window. We got this kid, Sean Behrens from DU, just down the street. He's been playing in Loveland the past couple months since DU won the national championship. And so a lot of people talk like he's ready to go. He's another one of those, maybe not Cale Makar level, obviously, but that can step into an NHL role very early. Just
not
with his
out of place and,
Yeah. He's a mature player, older, obviously, playing in the NCAA. So, and that's what the Avs are going to have to rely on. They're going to have to see production from the prospects that they've developed on those entry level deals to pinch pennies at the cap, or at the cap ceiling rather. So it's not the end of the world here. I think they can definitely, obviously bring back Middlestat, shore up depth a little bit. Jonathan Drouin said last night, this was great to hear. He was very much a reclamation project coming over in the off season, and his contract was a measly $800,000. So he'll look for a pay raise for sure. He had a great year.
A little prove it deal there.
Yeah, I think so. And his mentality has changed tenfold. He's a guy who struggled with mental health a little bit coming in, and I think he's only blossomed since being here with his best buddy, Nate McKinnon. It's a great home for him. And yeah, I look for them to lock him up. I don't know how much they're going to add just with the cap space that they do have. They could, make a couple maybe under the radar moves to help with the depth. They need to shore that up. But the biggest questions, Grant, lie in Landeskog's health. There's $7 million of cap right there. Nichushkin's situation, there's another $6 million sitting right there. You would foresee Logan O'Connor coming back, great depth player that would have been huge having him last night. So there's question marks outside of free agency within the organization. That's going to be the biggest narrative for the Avs this offseason.
How do you feel in just big picture going, a lot can happen going into next year, but I still feel like the window is there. And I don't think this is it's over.
It's very much, it's very much open. We cannot put the same team on the ice next year.
Yeah.
That team can't win a Stanley Cup. And it was, last year's situation was more dire than this year's. This year's team was definitely better than last year's.
Last year felt a little bit like duct tape and bubble gum.
Dude, yeah,
they together.
I remember that season that they had a home game against the Boston Bruins. Legitimately, 9 of the forwards were from the minor league team. That's how many injuries they had.
Yeah,
it's just ridiculous. You can't win games like that. But
no,
yeah, they need to shore up their depth, and how they're going to do that is going to be a lot of that. How they're going to execute shoring up their depth is going to come in the health of Gabriel Landeskog and the health of Valeri Nichushkin. And if those two players are on the ice, it's a game changer, man.
It raises the bar.
I mean, from the Stanley Cup team, you're missing an entire line of Nazem Kadri, who the Avs let walk in favor of Valeri Nichushkin. So how does that look right now? Obviously, minus Valeri Nichushkin and minus Gabriel Landeskog. That's your entire second line from the Stanley Cup team.
Yeah, it's a pretty good second line.
It's a great second line, and that is massive, massive blow. So, yeah, if you get those two guys back, great. If you don't, as heartbreaking as that will be, then we get a little flexibility. Yeah, we ride. We go get that's all-star caliber cap space right there that you could go add the depth that you desperately need.
Yeah.
So and that answer may sound heartless, because if Gabriel Landeskog never plays again, it's going to break my heart, man. He's been my favorite player of all time. But from a business side, the answers need to come to the surface.
Yeah. No, I think that's very well said. No, you nailed it.
So, in the draft, they do have a first round pick, so it'll be late first round, but that's great to continue adding to the cupboard, and then a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh. So we'll see how she goes. Okay, Grant, the only remaining active series since we didn't get one Game 7, that would have been great. Canucks versus the Oilers. Drama in Canada. Game 3. Carson Soucy at the end of the game cross-checks Connor McDavid. If you watch the replay, looks like a little slashing battle back and forth. McDavid and Soucy going at it. Nikita Zadorov skates over, cross-checks McDavid in the back as he's falling. Soucy gets the cross-check to McDavid's face. And then post-game, Nikita Zadorov with a interesting quote. At the end of the day, they have to protect their investment, talking about the NHL protecting Connor McDavid and Carson Soucy going on to get a 1-game suspension. Would have you know, Nikita Zadorov has been a hero for Vancouver in these playoffs, definitely playing the bad boy role, put Evander Kane into the third row via hit. I don't know if you saw that, but he planted him into the Oilers bench. Kind of cringeworthy moment. Elias Pettersson's production has not been there for the Canucks. Rick Tocchet post-game calls out the passengers on the team. One-on-one interview with Pettersson was eerie. He was dead silent. He was asked about his lack of production. He sat there in silence for a good couple seconds that felt like minutes and just gave him it's a good question.
I don't want to sound hyperbolic. This is one of those series where I'm reminded just how different Canada is. The energy around these press conferences, what's happening on the ice. I know that sounds crazy because like the NHL is both countries and we have a lot of great hockey here in the States. When two teams like this that are just so like starved for a cup square off, it just gets weird. You just get reminded that it's just different up there. And then like I try to watch like TSN on YouTube and just like the tenor of how it's talked about and the vibes around this are just so different that it is kind of, it's crazy. There's no other way to kind of like break it down. That cross check to McDavid was like, that's something you saw like 20 years ago. It's like, oh, this doesn't happen in the game anymore, especially to a guy like him. And then boom. And then the response is just like, well, yeah, the league is, protecting their little star boy. And, it's weird. Tonight's going to be probably just as weird. This series has like kept me up literally at night watching, and it hasn't ruined my life in any way. I'm not like struggling, but I'm just like more tired and I'm like, what the hell's going on? It's like, oh yeah, I stayed up till like 1 a.m. to watch fucking Canucks Oilers, which is just something I haven't done since college.
Grant, are you telling me that you think if the Canucks lose, they're going to riot in the city?
I don't know what to think anymore. I thought I had a beat on this series. I thought I had it figured out. They're not going to let them watch downtown. So, whatever happens, it's going to be scattered. I don't know. I'm rooting for a Game 7. This one drops at like 8 p.m. So it's like more of like a daffodil time.
The farther the Canucks playoff run goes, I think the more you agree with me. There is hysteria in northwestern Canada right now, and been a lot of heroes. We talked about Nikita Zadorov. Archer Shilov has stepped in admirably as a rookie goaltender. 907 save percentage. Some of the saves, though,
it's amazing,
have been ridiculous. It looks like a gymnast back there. On TV, surefire goals. Oh, that's a goal. Open net. Nope, not so fast, my friend. To quote Lee Corso, diving across the crease. It looks like a video game sometimes.
Yeah.
What am I watching? Some drama in the net for Edmonton. Calvin Pickard has stepped in. I got a soft spot for him. Used to be the backup goalie in Colorado. He's got a .915 save percentage during the playoffs. 1-1 record. Seemed to shore up between the pipes, but then post game of Game 5, you got Skinner in the presser talking about how he expects to play in Game 6 back in Edmonton. So we'll see how the Oilers coaching staff navigates that situation. Calvin Pickard, impressive too, because he is 32 years old. My mistake. So good to see a little late career step in for him, have a good playoff run. Last minute game winning goal for JT Miller in Game 5. Rogers Place was bananas. The roof was coming off the building. And you saw it coming. He texted Rick Tocchet after Game 4 apologizing for Edmonton's late game goal in the last minute of Game 4, and then how just storybook was it for him to get the game winner with 30 seconds left in Game 5. Another narrative, love this one. Phil DiGiuseppe in and out of the lineup. Longtime minor league guy. Missed Game 3 and 4 for the birth of his second son. Comes back for Game 5. Scored his first career playoff goal at 30 years old. Very emotional post-game. Talking about his wife. Talking about his newborn kid. Just the battle that it's been in the NHL. In and out of the minors. In and out of this starting lineup with Vancouver. Love to see a guy who works his ass off for so many years get rewarded.
I love that those guys still exist in the league.
That's the blue collar stuff I just love to see here on the show.
Yeah.
Hard hat hockey, folks. It's a lifestyle. The Oilers expected goals for at 5v5, 2.6 Game 1, and has decreased every game since, even through Game 5. So the Canucks have definitely locked it up with team defense. Canucks played a little low event hockey the first 4 games, even despite the series drama. Their expected goals for at 5v5 was below 1.5 for the first 4 games, and then in Game 5, increased to 2.6 expected goals for. The Oilers' power play the first 3 games went 4 for 8. In the last 2 games, 1 for 7. So again, the Canucks have locked it down. I think you see that most in JT Miller down the center, locking up Connor McDavid.
We're locked in for tonight, man. Let's see it. Let's see some hockey.
Grant, if you've got nothing else for the matchups, that leads us into NHL housekeeping. If you're ready for it,
clean it up.
Let's clean up the league. This house is a mess. Let's clean it up. Clean it up, kids.
Batman, clean it up.
Gary,
this is embarrassing.
Grant, I can't wait to talk about the international stage this summer and do some projections for Team USA, Canada, Sweden, all the above. That's going to be fun.
Yes.
Okay, housekeeping. Craig Berube, in a, I would say, predictable move, was hired at the Toronto Maple Leafs. Craig, most notably known for his Stanley Cup that he led the St. Louis Blues to in 2019. The Blues that season were 15-18-4 in January, one of the worst teams in the league, and then they came storming back to win the Stanley Cup that year.
I still can't believe they did that.
I can't believe that either. They beat a very good Boston team, too, on the road to win the Cup. And then he also is familiar with the Leafs drama. He played 40 games as a player in Toronto, so somewhat familiar with that landscape. So, Grant, how do you feel about this move?
Yeah, I love that just like a guy can play like 40 games. It's like, oh, he's in the culture. Like he's a Leaf. He's a Leaf through and through. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. It might be just like a little too recent from them getting bounced for me to ever think that like I just have recency bias on this project just isn't working. So maybe it is just enough to change the guy behind the bench. That Blues run was just insane. The fact that they did that now gives like every team hope, like when they're like really bad around Christmas, like, the Blues did it that one time, and like it'll probably never happen again or for like a long time, but because it did happen, you can now point to it and be like, well, hey, what are you gonna do? But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you said, you kind of saw it coming. So
yeah, I mean, the Toronto Maple Leafs are expected to go get the big name. That's exactly what they did. It's the most marquee name probably available for any head coaching vacancy, and they grabbed it in New York Yankees fashion. That's what the fans expect around there. So we'll see if it works out. I think he'll do well. I do.
Yeah.
I think I don't think that their off-season success was pending on the head coaching vacancy. I think it's going to be very much what they do with the roster.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Grant, Mark Messier Leadership Award goes to Jacob Trouba of the New York Rangers. Well deserved.
I'll go from here. I learned something new. Trent texted me and was like, Trouba won the Messier Award. And I was like, I didn't know Messier had an award named after him. And he's like, oh, do you not know how this is picked? He went on to explain to me that basically just Mark Messier just like picks a guy in the league that he likes and just gives him the award essentially. And he might have some criteria like, oh, it's a leadership and it's, upholding values, but it is just like Messier just being him. And Mark Messier, legend, he's not, I don't think he's like a terribly controversial, like hateable, but this is outrageous. Just to be like, oh yeah, the dude for the Rangers that flies around the ice, like hurting people. Yeah, I love that guy.
Yeah, look, New York Rangers fans out there, you're going to the Eastern Conference Finals. You very well may win the Stanley Cup. This award, and I'm not saying Jacob Trouba doesn't deserve it. I think he's had a fantastic year as the cap.
Who's won this in the past? Who's famous Messier Award recipient?
I'm not saying Trouba doesn't deserve it. What I am saying is the criteria and process of this award is going to have much more respect, dignity, and notoriety when it's not just dad's the head coach and picks his son to be the team captain, right? Like, yeah, my boy's the best. That's why I coach the team.
Real
right?
Student of the game.
Yeah. They need to get a more distinguished process, have a little more selection by committee, and add a little more rapport to this award, like the Hart or the Norris.
But that's up to the league, right? Like, I don't know. I had never heard about this until Trent texted me, and maybe that makes me a bad fan. But this is hilarious. Yeah, it's the Mark Messier Leadership Award.
Yeah.
That's okay. Run by the league. All right, yeah.
We don't have to harp on it. All right, Grant, Panda Watch, Utah Hockey Watch. Not a lot of updates in Utah this week, but I did want to add just a small media note. The Kelsey brothers on their podcast were discussing the name options, and they agree that the Outlaws or the Yeti is the best option, but that neither are great, and that the franchise should keep digging because of the 20 names suggested to the fans in that survey. None of them are that great.
Yeah.
So.
I've noticed they haven't seen a lot on my social media. And I think maybe a little bit of the novelty's wearing off just a bit.
Maybe back to the drawing board is the hint that the Smith family should take. I'm excited for them to get started, for the record. But yeah, I do think that maybe just keep that creative team working, because none of those names were.
They almost dropped too many. I know they wanted to do like a fan survey, so you want to give a lot of options. So I respect that. I can appreciate that. But like when you have 24 recommendations or whatever the number was, you don't really have any. It's too many. You need like 5 or 4, when you got to tighten it up a little bit. But just to be like, let's throw everything out there, it makes it seem like, there's not a clear leader in the clubhouse.
Yeah, and I don't think my pick of Caribou is going to win. I found out there's no Caribou in Utah, so
that won't stop. There's no Jazz in Utah either. That's
okay. Yeah. You got a point. Grant,
there's no lakes in Los Angeles.
Grant, hockey is coming to Lake Tahoe. The Lake Tahoe Night Monsters, co-owned by Heisman winner, Florida Gators legend, and somewhat of an NFL career, Tim Tebow, brought a little bit of magic to the Denver Broncos in a playoff run. If you're wondering where the name Night Monsters come from, why don't you go ahead and ask me?
Okay, Trent, what's Night Monsters?
Grant, I'm so glad you asked. Let me tell you. There was a mansion built in 1929 in Emerald Bay, which is on Lake Tahoe, by a Miss Laura J. Knight. Tim Tebow also appreciated the name Knight and everything that came with the nobility and the honor of being a knight. And then other story, folklore, longtime legendary monster, Tahoe Tessie is somewhat of a dragon figure that people believe is a monster that lives at the bottom of Lake Tahoe. So rather than just calling them the Tahoe Tessies, they called them the Tahoe Night Monsters. And we will see them play this October in their debut in the ECHL, and they'll play in the Blue Event Center, which seats 4,500 people. And I think I might surprise my wife with some season tickets. I'm only 2 hours away.
I'm sure she'll love that. Well, nothing says I love you like the East Coast scene.
Tahoe, maybe a Tahoe Night Monsters jersey, and we'll see.
Ooh, yeah.
It would be fun. I am looking forward. We're definitely going to go to at least a game. I think it'll be a good hockey town to support a minor league team. Okay, Grant, this is a conversation we'll talk way more about in the off season, but I wanted to touch on it. So, Valeri Nichushkin, before puck drop of Game 4, first of all, he shows up to practice that day, and everything is normal. Gearing up for Game 4 at home. No one suspects anything is wrong. And then rumors and tweets start exploding less than an hour before puck drop that night that Valeri Nichushkin, whether he failed a drug test or something else, didn't get clarity on that, but he is now back in stage 3 of the NHL players. What's the word?
I don't know what the actual phrase is, but it's like it's their like player wellness
abuse, substance abuse
program.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can read between the lines here that it must have been a failed drug test in the capacity that he had maybe failed prior. And at a certain point, you can't keep failing these. A little background. This is something that the league's been working on for, I would go back like 15 years, where they realized they had a problem where they couldn't even really test for narcotics, stimulants, things like that, because so many guys would just be suspended. So they instituted this kind of slowly over the course of 10 or so years, and trying to just change the perception around it to say, like, guys, you can't be doing this, and if you will, there'll be consequences. Anecdotally, I think it's probably like the league had a problem. The league had a problem with this type of stuff, and moving in this direction. I also think just the younger players aren't in the same scene as maybe guys were 15 years ago. But this hurts, and I hope he gets the help he needs. I hope for the Avs' sake that they have people around him. But at the same time, like, if you're in the playoffs like this, you can't be doing stuff like that in the most important time of the season. So is it an act of a selfish player, or is it a guy that needs help? I don't know. I'm not in the room, and I don't really want to make too many rash conclusions.
Yeah, from a human perspective, you wish him nothing but the best. You hope he figures it out. Clearly some demons there that have come up multiple times, as this is his third stint in the player's substance abuse program. And for his family too. They deserve, to have a good husband and father figure in their household, and you hope that he figures it out. From an Avs perspective, he's on the second season of an 8-year, $49 million contract. He was also a reclamation project. The Avs believed in him and are counting on him. This is now the third stint in his tenure with the Avs in the substance abuse program, and the second time 2 years in a row that he's essentially bailed on his teammates in the playoffs. The incident in Seattle last year was bizarre, and he was out the rest of the series, which did not help their problems with depth, it's been the Avs' problem. They've been out of depth since they won the Stanley Cup. And then last night, they lost a Game 6 to the Stars. How crucial would it have been to have at the time, leading goal scorer in the NHL in the playoffs on the ice? That might help you out a little bit, right?
Yeah, he produces. I mean, that's,
The team is counting.
From a hockey standpoint, it hurts.
There's accountability here. The team is counting on you. And last year, it was a much more positive vibe going into the off season. We believe in Val. Hope he gets well. Want him to come back. His teammates in the locker room this go around. First of all, his nameplate was removed immediately as the players came back from warm-ups. Val Nichushkin's presence was no more, and they did not mince their words. Jack Johnson and Cagliano were very transparent in how they felt about the situation.
And those are some guys that have been around the league for a long time and have seen, they know how locker rooms work. Those are guys that understand team culture. Those are your leaders without, does Jack have an A on his sweater? I don't know. But regardless, they're guys that you're respected voices.
Yeah. So how do the Avs proceed from here? So a couple of different options. It'll be fascinating to watch as we talked in the offseason breakdown for the Avs. Their biggest question marks already lie within the organization. It's going to be the health of the players they have in their franchise that they have locked up. So do they look for a trade? If somehow, so first and foremost, he at the end of his 6-month suspension is eligible to be reinstated into the league where he would effectively assume his contract with the Colorado Avalanche. The Avs at that point could look to move his contract. I feel like that's obviously a giant risk for another franchise, but somebody like the Edmonton Oilers seems to have no issues with bringing in players with, a bit of a sketchy track record. So, I don't think it's impossible to move him. I don't think you would get as much as you would expect.
You don't have a lot of leverage in that. You're not going to flip them for a high round or anything like that. Like, people are going to understand what it is. And that's almost where relationships within front offices have to come into play, where it's hey, we're going to go to an organization where he's going to be successful. We know that there's people in place there that care about the individual person. That's almost where that comes into play, where these guys all know each other in front offices and scouting. They can talk honestly about it, but 6 months is a long time. So a lot can change between then and now.
Yeah. They could look to buy him out, which that would be a 12-year penalty. And every one of those 12 years, they're paying $3 million for the buyout. No, thank you. They could look to contract termination. So I've been trying to dig on this as much as I could. It seems like Pierre LeBrun and Elliot Friedman suggest that the Avs are essentially stuck with this situation. I'm sure they're going to explore all of the legality and fine print of this situation in the offseason to see if they could cut ties. I gotta imagine they're going to look to, because at the end of the day, it's a breach of contract. I don't know if the NHL
I don't know if it is. I mean, the players union might have something built in to be like.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The players union might have something built in to where the Avs are contractually obliged to keep him. But Grant, if I go work for a corporation and I sign a contract, that corporation, human element aside, is expecting me to show up and produce. And if I don't show up and produce because I've got my own personal issues, then that corporation has no business counting on me, right?
Yeah, I don't disagree. But that is where collective bargaining comes in, and the players union's done a lot. I mean, the players union was a part of setting up this sort of rehabilitation program,
right?
So there's a collaborative part of all of this. I know you're frustrated because this is your team, and I'm not trying to downplay how much this hurt, but this process is put in for a reason, and like I said, a lot could change over the 6 months.
Yeah, so we'll see about the legality of it. And then the last option here would be to just keep him. Unfortunately, so his and the Avs are going to, and this is another piece that the Avs are going to have to balance this offseason. His cap hit is going to come back on the books. So through the month of November, you're going to be playing without him and essentially saving this $6 million bubble for when Val Nichushkin does return. There's a huge question mark here. If I'm Joe Sakic, Chris McFarland, Jared Bednar, what does it communicate to Nate McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Cale Makar, Casey Middlestat, Miles Wood in that room who are fighting for the city of Denver? If you let this guy come back in the room, is that going to be accepted? Is that going to be sending the right message? I don't know. I'm not in the room, but that's something that they're going to have to figure out. And if that is going to cause a rift and be detrimental, you move him right away. So
I think the Avs are a good, well-ran organization. They could figure this out.
I think they will. Again,
yeah.
I just want to say this.
It's tough right now. It just hurts right now.
I want to say it one more time. Wish Val nothing but the best, right? I mean, when he's played, he's been awesome. And outside of that, I've only heard great things about his character. Well, I've heard great things about him and the presser, right? Like he seems to be a good guy who is battling demons.
As a personality and a guy, he's not a villain. He's not toxic.
Yeah.
If this is something he's dealing with, you hope he handles it. I mean, addiction's hell. So if that's what's at play here, all the best to him.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. All right, Grant, we're going to wrap up this show with the Hard Hats of the Week. As always, the Hard Hats of the Week are sponsored by Leroy's Bar. Located in the heart of Worcester, Ohio, Leroy's establishment has provided cheap pitchers and a safe haven for blue-collar workers alike since 1969. Leroy's can be your hockey home for all of the NHL playoff action. Drink responsibly and drive safe. Okay, Grant, I got mine. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready if you're ready.
Send it.
Okay, number 3 for me is Jordan Martinook. He made an amazing goal line save in Game 6 for the Canes. One of these just plays that I keep rewatching it and I'm expecting the puck to go in the net. He laid it all on the line, literally, and you gotta give it props to him. Tough kind of ending for the Canes, but in that moment, special. Number 2, our guy JT Miller, Ohio kid. Big JT Miller guy for going back a lot of years. He was struggling a little bit, I think last year or year prior, Vancouver, signed that big ticket, but man, he's fucking rising to the occasion right now and being the leader of that organization and just a phenomenal goal in Game 5. So go JT. We're rooting for you, Columbus. And then this is a cop out. Number 1, all the fine folks that gave us a shout out last week. My phone was blowing up all this week of people downloading the podcast, friends, family. Thank you. It's very cool to hear the response and correspondence of what we're doing. And, at the end of the day, Trenton and I are just having a good time here. So, the more traction we get and build up, it's great. So thanks, everybody.
Love that answer. It really heartfelt. I mean, family run organization here. We're family.
Small business.
Hard hats of the week for me, Grant. Number 3, I got Phil DiGiuseppe scoring his first playoff career goal ever, 30 years old, missing 2 games for the birth of his new son. Just speaks volumes to his character as a husband, as a father. Got his priorities in line. The guy just emulates everything we love here at Hard Hat Hockey. Just blue collar to a T. At number 2, I've got head coaches. And I say that and I keep it vague because head coaches have more of effect than you think. Paul Maurice ripped the Panthers in a timeout in the middle of Game 5, and they went on to score the very next shift. Rick Tocchet calls out his guys with calling out some of the passengers after Game 4, and they go on to win Game 5. Obviously, Jimmy Montgomery was very animated on the bench, getting his boys fired up as the Bruins won Game 5 in a hostile home ice environment. So I make it my number 2 because the head coaches, while not playing, they have a massive effect here. And it was good to see some of the brass of head coaching prowess in the league step up this past week. So love to see the emotion. At number 1, JT Miller locking down McDavid and defending the home ice with that game winner. It was your number 2. Yeah, he's playing like a man possessed, absolute warrior. Even if he's not on the score sheet,
another level.
Yeah, even when he's not producing points, he is playing that role of just lockdown center, and that's what they need against the Oilers.
Toughest job in hockey.
Fans, as a reminder, reach out to us. Comment, Facebook, Twitter, email hardhathockey1@gmail.com. Let us know, what is your favorite beer when you're watching your favorite NHL team? We want to know. We will give you a shout out. Reach out. We love you all. What a great week. We'll get into round 3 next week for the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. That's going to do it for us here at Hard Hat Hockey. Have a great week, everybody. We love you.